Welcome to Growing Younger podcast, where we guide you through your journey of reaching your fitness goals after 40. Is it okay to run for fitness if you have been diagnosed with early stage knee arthritis? So this is the topic for today's podcast. My name is Alex Blazewski. I'm the physio with over 20 years experience from New Zealand, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Growing Younger program. So, very interesting question we're going to discuss today, because if you are a runner, especially if you're a runner over 50 and you may suspect that you might have a bit of arthritis in your knees or hips, or you've actually been diagnosed, then I think the next 10 to 15 minutes is going to be very, very interesting for you. Okay, so let's dive in. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about what is arthritis. So arthritis essentially is the degeneration or wearing out of the joint. Pretty much it can affect or pretty much almost any joint in the body. Now, for the sake of this presentation today, we are going to primarily talk about osteoarthritis, which is the most common type of arthritis, which in general terms can be described as wear and tear. Now, there are other types of arthritis, such as rheumatoid, psoriasis. There's other types of arthritis that are sort of more inflammatory. They're kind of more systemic. They might be a bit different. So just want to be clear, I'm primarily talking about osteoarthritis today in this podcast. So basically, osteoarthritis, what happens is that the surface, the cartilage or the cushioning in your joints, it wears out. And in the early stages, so basically the beginning of arthritis, and some people get it maybe as early as their 40s, and some, probably more common 50s, 60s, or even 70s. So you get wearing out of that smooth surface in your joints. So basically there's less cushioning that causes increased rubbing in the joints, and therefore it causes pain and inflammation. Now, early stage arthritis, you're still functional, okay? So your joint usually still moves okay, but you may sort of feel a little bit of an ache now and then. If you do a little bit more than usual, you might experience a little bit of discomfort in the area. You may possibly get like a little bit of swelling from time to time. So early stage arthritis, you still can function, you can still do things, but you may experience sort of intermittent discomfort from time to time. So let's address the myth that is very common. And I'm sure if you're a runner, you probably heard this before. People believe that if you run, it actually stuffs up your joints, okay, that it actually causes arthritis. And look, for years, people used to believe that, and that is a very common thing that you may hear from a number of people. Now, to be honest, if you asked me the same question 15 years ago, I probably would have given you a very different answer. I'd probably say yes, running does increase the chance of getting arthritis, because that's what information available at the time was. But things have drastically changed. So based on the latest research, what we do know is that recreational runners, actually this is based on studies, recreational runners actually have a lower incidence or lower risk of knee arthritis than people who are more sedentary. Okay, so pretty much the opposite to what we thought. Okay, so there's been, I'll just quote a few studies for you, just so I want to always support my statements with hard evidence. Okay, so one study was done back in 2018, and it was published in a medical magazine called Arthritis Care and Research. Interestingly enough, they looked at people over 50 with known diagnosed osteoarthritis in the knee, and basically they looked at they had that sample size. And they looked at the people over 50 with arthritis who were runners. And then also they looked at the people who were not runners. And they compared the two. So what they found is that runners were more likely to experience improvements in knee pain compared to non-runners. Okay, so very striking findings. So people who ran with existing arthritis were actually better off, at least in terms of their pain levels. Okay, so very, very interesting finding. Now, another very recent study. This is so this was an overview study, which means they've looked at a number of different other studies and summarized the findings, which is actually very powerful. So what they actually found is that that most physical activities, including running, are not linked to structural progression of osteoarthritis. Again, further evidence that by running, at the very least, you're not making it any worse. And one more study published in 2023, again a review study, and they actually found that recreational runners had a lower prevalence or lower probability of knee pain compared to non-runners. So this particular study actually suggested that if you run, your chances of actually suffering some kind of knee pain or knee problem are actually significantly reduced compared to those people who are more sedentary. Okay, so very interesting study. So at the very least, it's suggesting that there's no further harm being done to your knee by running. Now, so these studies I do need to sort of mention a bit of a caveat. So there's running and there's running. Okay, so most of these studies, people kind of so some of them people actually self-selected running. Okay, what it means is that if it feels comfortable, they continue to run. If it hurts, they would kind of ease off and back off. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that if you have severe arthritis and you're gonna start running and it's gonna hurt really bad, that you should keep on running. Okay, so you definitely have to apply a bit of common sense. I'm not suggesting that running is always going to be good for you if you have arthritis. But it seems like if your symptoms are relatively mild, and as long as you listen to your pain and you're not, you stay at sort of relatively comfortable levels of pain, then there's no harm in you running, even if you have underlying arthritic changes in your knees and hips. So to try to make sense of these studies, so why is actually running, it seems like it's actually making things better, not making it worse. So as we know, movement is good for us. So movement is medicine. So moderate exercise helps to lubricate joints. Okay, so it helps to improve the shock absorption, you could say, in the joints. It strengthens the muscles around them. And we know when you strengthen the muscles around the joint, it actually helps to stabilize the joint, and there's less rubbing. So there's less pain and discomfort when you're moving. And it seems like it actually is. So movement, being active, helps to slow the progression of arthritis. So essentially, running when done the right way can help to maintain joint health by, number one, improving cartilage nutrition. Okay, so it helps to improve the flow of nutrients to the cartilage to maintain cartilage health. It also helps to strengthen the muscles. So running may help to strengthen. It wouldn't be the best exercise to strengthen your muscles because, strengthening would be the best exercise. Resistance training is. But, to a certain degree, running could also be useful to maintain a bit of muscle strength in your legs. See, the other positive aspect of running as well, because running burns a lot of calories. So if you're a runner, you are less likely to be overweight. Now, if you are not overweight, what it means is that there's less stress on your joints. So I guess there's this collateral advantage of running, even though, directly it doesn't kind of help the joint, but because it reduces the weight, it burns calories, it keeps the weight off, it actually helps to take the strain off the knees. So this partly could explain why in all these studies that I just talked about, people who ran actually had less knee pain than people who didn't run. look, another benefit of exercise is just it helps to improve your mood. Like I know when I go for a run and I'm a little bit stressed after work, it actually helps to take your mind off things. It actually, I do believe that it's really good for your mental health as well. So that could help the pain levels too. All right. Okay, so let's talk about some practical tips. Okay, so as I mentioned before, like I mean, it seems like running is okay with, with people with arthritis, or early stage arthritis. But there are certainly things you have to be cautious about or be aware of. Okay, so let's talk about these things. So if you are experiencing pain while running, okay, especially if the pain is sharp or the onset of pain is quite sudden, at the very least you should back off. Okay, you should stop, maybe give yourself a bit of rest, and then maybe try again later. And if it's still there, if the pain is still there, then maybe you should consider going to the doctor and just checking with them and seeing what's going on. I mean, if you get a bit of a mild ache that's very tolerable, in most cases it would probably be okay to keep running as long as it doesn't make it any worse. Okay. Now, look, guys, very important here. I do not know your personal circumstances, so I'm definitely not giving a medical advice here. So if in doubt, always go and talk to your doctor, your physio. So this is just general information. I do not, do not take my advice and just apply it to your circumstances. But I hopefully it just gives you a bit of general information to work with. Therefore, could help. Right. So pain, location, and type is one thing. The second thing is, so think about the surface you're running on. Okay. So are you running on concrete, which is probably not ideal for someone who has a bit of joint arthritis, because it increases the impact or the strain or the stress on the joints. I'd probably choose softer surfaces to run on. So maybe like trails or tracks, maybe sort of grassy surfaces. There's definitely less impact when you run on those. Also, look, these days, there's so much science that goes into making sports or running shoes. So get a good running shoe. I see so many people just putting on their, random sneakers or Skechers, and, basically casual shoes and going for a run in those. Okay, I can, I often drive past and I see people running in literally Skechers. Okay, which is very far from ideal. Now, if you're a young, 20-year-old, you could sometimes get away with it. But if you have a bit of joint pain, you could pay quite a high price for that. Okay, so make sure you've got good running shoes. Consider volume and intensity. So if you're like an experienced runner and you've been running marathons for years and you're a very experienced runner, and you're starting to get a bit of knee pain while you're running, okay, so maybe it's time to just adjust your training intensity and volume. Maybe you could still continue to run, but just instead of running, 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers a week, you might run, reduce it by, say, 20%. And then the rest of the time you might be supplementing it with biking or swimming or, even like hiking, walking, that kind of thing. Okay, I know it might sound like, I don't really want to be doing these other things, but, if you want to continue to run, this is just reality that you may just have to do these things. And by the way, cycling, I think if you're a runner, you should also cycle, because cycling, it's great for your fitness, but also it helps to build your thigh muscles. And thigh muscles are very important for supporting your knee joints. So it could act as a prevention for developing knee issues such as osteoarthritis further down the track. So just a bit of a side note, cycling is generally very good for your knees, especially if you're a runner. So strength and mobility, I kind of touched on that before. If you're a runner, I definitely think you should be doing at least a little bit of strengthening. And look, I'm not talking about lifting heavy weights or becoming a bodybuilder, nothing like that. But just even a couple of times a week, a bit of strength training, targeting your kind of major muscle groups such as your glutes and your quads and your hamstrings and calves. I mean, that could go a long way in terms of injury prevention. So, definitely consider that. I do see people who tend to get into cardio type fitness exercise. They tend to really kind of go one dimensional a little bit, so they actually don't do a lot of strength training. It's the same as some people. If you ever been to a weights gym, you see a lot of, especially guys, they tend to be like really bulky, big guys, like they lift a lot of heavy weights, but they don't do any cardio. Okay, so not ideal. And in the same way, if you're doing a lot of cardio, but do no strength training, in the very same way, you are being a little bit one-sided. So you need both. You need cardio, and you also need strength training. Okay. Cool. Warm-ups are important, especially if you live in the colder climate. In the wintertime, muscles are generally stiffer when they're cold. Joints are stiffer when they're cold. So getting the just getting warmer, like just by doing some simple, sit-ups, simple warm-up exercises will actually help you feel better, particularly your joints when you start running. Also, like, this is hard to kind of put on exact terms, but listen to your body. Like, especially if you have been running for a little while, you probably kind of get to know your body a little bit. Sometimes it tells you something. Okay, so you might feel a niggle, and you got a gut feeling that niggle is not something good. So maybe you should have a rest for a couple of weeks to recover. So your body talks to you, and you got to listen to your body and respond to it. Okay. Now, look, at any point in time, if you are in doubt, the best thing you can do is go and speak to a health professional, okay? Your physio, your doctor. I would say if you want some guidance in terms of if you have arthritis and you want to continue to run, if you're looking for a bit of professional guidance, I would probably suggest speaking to a sports physician or sports doctor. So that's a specialist. They obviously specialize in people who exercise, so they specialize in exercise-related injuries. These people are especially equipped and trained for helping and guiding you through your fitness journey. As I said, like especially if you are a runner and you're looking for some advice in that area. Look, the other thing I wanted to mention today. So as I mentioned before, sometimes you just realize that, look, running just doesn't work for you, okay? It causes maybe too much discomfort, too much pain. You just feel like it's just not right for you, okay? So I wanted to talk a little bit about those kind of situations, okay? So what are you looking out for? So if your pain continuously gets worse, so if you go for a run today and it hurts a little bit, and you go for a run in a couple of days and it hurts more, and you go for a run in another couple of days and it hurts even more, and every time you go for a run, it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, clearly, something is not right. Okay, so that's when your body tells you gotta at least, put your running on hold. Okay, and look, if you try again, and if you try things and it still doesn't work out, well, look, you at some point in time, you just have to be honest with yourself. Maybe running is no longer a thing for you. Okay. If you have a bit of joint pain, and no matter what you do, you might have tried a bit of strengthening and it hasn't helped, then look, there are other options. Okay, so running, even though running is addictive and it's a great way to keep fit, but there are other options, and you have to be honest with yourself. Okay, sometimes it's just better to stop running and focus on other things. So other alternatives could be basically anything that's low impact. So things like, as I said, cycling, swimming. You can use a cross trainer, so that you get those machines in the gym. So that mimics running or walking, but there's very little impact. So most of the time, even if you have pain while running, you should be able to do cross training in most cases. Okay, so you can always find something else to keep you fit, some other form of exercise. And like I said, there's no point continuing to run and aggravate your pain, and you're not going to enjoy it. You're probably not going to get the results that you want anyway. So at some point in time, you just have to be real. Look, one last thing I wanted to mention today. I wanted to kind of, being a physio, I can actually think of a number of cases that I've come across, where people who had they had a known arthritis in their knees or hips, and they persisted with running, and remarkably, they actually got more comfortable as they went. I can think of people who have never done running before and started running at the age of 55 or 50, and their knee pain suddenly got better. Okay, so but one case that really stands out for me, and I was, like in my mind, it's almost a miracle. Okay, so I'll quickly tell you what happened. So this is actually it's a friend of mine and my business partner Gavin, co-founder of the Growing Younger program. So he actually had, a number of years ago, he had a really major surgery on his knee, and he basically had a sort of an artificial wedge inserted into his knee. So his knee was stuffed. The surgeon at the time said that, look, sooner or later you're probably going to get arthritis. It's just a question of when. Okay, so knowing that information, he kind of pretty much didn't really try running for a very long time. Okay, because he just assumed, what people say, if running gives you arthritis, he didn't want to make things worse, so he didn't try running. But I'd say about probably a year and a half ago, he started doing a bit of jogging just to keep fit, and then he sort of got into running gradually, a little bit more, and so gradually as he continued to run, his knee issues, like his knee pain and discomfort, suddenly just pretty much disappeared, and now he can run miles and miles and without sort of any issues at all. And remarkably, 2 months ago, he actually completed a triathlon event. Okay, so so very, you could say a transformational story, but yeah, like nothing else changed for him apart from the fact that he's just started running, and all of a sudden his knee pain just kind of got better and better. To be honest, he is very healthy, and he exercises, he goes to the gym regularly and all the rest of it. So, he is definitely a healthy individual with a healthy weight. But yeah, that's just his remarkable knee story. So, that's hopefully inspires some of you. So look, a quick summary. We've talked for almost 20 minutes now. So should you stop running if you got early stage arthritis? So not necessarily. Okay, so Sean says probably not. If you enjoy running, and if that's your favorite way of keeping fit, and if your body can tolerate it, that's very important. If your body doesn't, if running does not majorly aggravate your knee or hip pain, then it's probably okay. The research say that as long as it doesn't cause any major flare-ups of pain, it actually probably is good for you long term rather than bad for you. Okay. However, if it causes ongoing issues with your pain, if it makes things worse, then you should definitely, first of all, you need to be speaking to a medical professional, but also, you should definitely actively look for alternatives for keeping fit, and there are plenty. All right, so either way, whatever you choose, whatever happens, staying active is very important, so make sure you do that. But yeah, hopefully this episode is a bit longer than usual, but it's just a lot of information to present to you. So hopefully you are still listening, and all the best for now. I'll speak to you on the next podcast.